Hello, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Brayden Bushby, the Thunder Bay man convicted of manslaughter in the death of Barbara Kentner, is back behind bars. He was originally sentenced to nearly 8 years in prison, but Bushby was granted day parole in August 2023, and that was continued earlier this year. However, that day parole was revoked on July 23rd after breaching some of the conditions of his parole. Bushby was found guilty of manslaughter in December 2020. In 2017, he threw a metal trailer hitch from a moving vehicle that hit the Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation woman in the abdomen. Barbara Kentner died of her injuries 5 months later. The Parole Board of Canada decision notes Bushby breached the condition not to consume alcohol when he was stopped by police and failed a breathalyzer in late April. He was also in the company of a woman who was assessed not to be a positive peer. The Parole Board also questioned why Bushby got a tattoo of a Confederate flag on his chest while on day parole. He can apply for parole again in 1 year. Statistics Canada released the Crime Severity Index, or CSI, last week, and one community in Saskatchewan is pleased that their concerns have been addressed. In 2022, North Battleford had the highest CSI score in Canada. The ranking led to the label the crime capital of Canada, and because the community is about 30% Indigenous, racist incidents would increase. However, in February, town officials told Stats Canada such labels harm communities. So the agency made a crucial change in their recent index. The 2023 CSI does not rank communities with populations between 10,000 and 100,000 people. North Battleford's website now offers information that challenges the idea that it is an unsafe community, and to counter racist stereotypes, North Battleford Mayor David Gillen is thankful for the change.
People were pointing fingers. This must be your fault. And every year when these statistics come out and these ranking would come out and we were high in the ranking, it would really spike racism in our communities.
The U.S. Department of the Interior released its final report on Tuesday, explaining the trauma and pain the federal Indian boarding schools inflicted. The Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative report calls for a formal apology from the U.S. government and ongoing support to help Indigenous people recover from the intergenerational trauma the schools left. Between 1819 and through the 1970s, about 18,600 Indigenous students attended an estimated 417 U.S. Indian boarding schools. 1,025 is the number listed for other institutions like orphanages, asylums, and similar missions that took Indigenous children. The amount of students believed to have died while attending is 973. 74 marked or unmarked burial sites at schools were also identified. An estimated $23 billion by today's standards was spent by the U.S. on the schools. Authors of the report say all these numbers could be much higher as more research is done. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, Laguna Pueblo, said the U.S. government took deliberate and strategic actions through the schools to isolate Indigenous children from their families and deny them their cultural identities.
This trauma is not new to Indigenous people. One of the reasons I launched the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative was to ensure that this important story was told, that all of America knows of the intergenerational impacts of these policies, and that we as a nation take steps to heal from them.
The report also calls for all lands that once housed boarding schools to go back to Indigenous peoples, and a national memorial that honors the Native children should be built. Following Holland's Road of Healing last year to listen to boarding school survivors, Congress is now working on creating a Truth and Healing Commission on Indian boarding school policies. It's to investigate federal schools, but also private and church-run schools. Wildfires in northern Manitoba have forced more than 1,000 First Nations residents to flee their homes. Most of the evacuees are on their way to Winnipeg and Brandon. and the Canadian Red Cross says more are on the way. CTV's Danton Unger has the details.
Flames dance dangerously close to Marcel Colum First Nation in northern Manitoba. This wildfire, sparked by lightning, has forced a full evacuation of the community this week, with more than 200 people having to up and leave.
That fire is probably less than 25% contained at this time. And so we're not in a position to allow anybody back in there. And it's about 1,000 hectares in size.
Earl Simmons with the Manitoba Wildfire Service says crews are working to save homes from the fire burning 4 kilometers away.
Crews from our wildfire service, along with the Office of the Fire Commissioner, went in and put up sprinklers on that community to protect the infrastructure and houses. So right now they're manning that just in case.
On the other side of the province, 3 other First Nations, Wasagamak, God's Lake and Red Sucker Nisininu Nation, have been evacuated due to the wildfire smoke. And as of Tuesday, the Canadian Red Cross says Mantasippi Cree Nation near God's Lake is also being evacuated.
In those First Nations, we're evacuating all the people with the highest health priorities, and it's due to wildfire smoke. Altogether,
more than 1,400 residents have been evacuated from northern Manitoba, with more to come.
So many with hotel spaces being eaten up in Winnipeg that we're now having to look at Brandon.
And when it comes to feeding all these evacuees, Harvest Manitoba has partnered with MKO.
As it stands right now, we have 16,000 pounds of food and other products that's staged and ready to go to support MKO communities and other communities, remote First Nations communities impacted by forest fire.
MKO Grand Chief Garrison Satie says it will likely be a while before these folks can return to their homes.
It's not going to be immediate, but as soon as we know that the smoke factor is eliminated, then we can start moving these people back to their First Nation.
Danton Unger, CTV News, Winnipeg.
A pair of First Nations in BC have filed a lawsuit against the Canadian government and fish farm companies in an attempt to overturn the decision allowing the farms to operate in BC waters for 5 more years. CTV's Ben Mildure has more on the lawsuit and the industry's response.
Flanked by singers and drummers, chiefs from Numgis and Kwikwasutuniuk Hakwumish First Nations shared the importance of wild salmon to their people.
It's fundamental to our survival and our rights and title. Absolutely fundamental. Our responsibility as chiefs is the protection of wild salmon.
During the 2019 election campaign, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised to phase out open net pen farms by 2025. But last month, the feds threw the industry a lifeline, allowing 14 farms to continue operating in BC waters until 2029. The 2 First Nations have filed suit against the feds and a pair of fish farming companies. Concerned about the health impacts of fish farms on wild salmon, the First Nations claim the government did not adequately consult with them before extending the licenses.
The Crown has some obligations that it has conveniently chosen to forget. A consultation cannot be a coffee, a donut, and gee, I'm glad you came, but here's what we're going to do anyway. Those days are long gone.
Grieg Seafood and Mowi Canada, the multinational companies that own the farms, say they operate with the consent of the First Nations whose waters the farms are in. These agreements are founded upon recognizing First Nations' right to exercise jurisdiction over the land, resources, and waters within their territories, Mowi said in a statement. The lawsuits seek to overturn the decision to extend the licenses.
The fight for our wild salmon survival isn't going to stop at the decision of the courts.
The federal government says the only new licenses it will issue going forward will be for closed containment aquaculture systems. Ben Mildure, CTV News, Vancouver.
To Alberta now, where a major deal has been confirmed between Canada's TC Energy Corporation and more than 70 Indigenous communities. TC Energy will sell a minority stake in its Nova gas transmission system and the Foothills pipeline assets for $1 billion to Indigenous communities. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is praising the deal as reconciliation.
You really can't have true sovereignty until you have financial sovereignty, until you can garner your own source of funding. Business is the best way to do that.
This is reconciliation, and I'm proud that Alberta is leading the way.
Each community will independently decide whether to participate in the purchase. The transaction is expected to be finalized in the third quarter of this year. Well, it was a homecoming for a family who's been displaced from Denendeh in the Northwest Territories. That story and our interview with the new Miss Universe Canada are coming up after the break. Welcome back. It's something they only heard stories and saw pictures of. But now a family displaced from Denendeh in the Northwest Territories is returning to their motherland for a big reunion. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs brings us this heartwarming story.
It's been a trip of a lifetime for Lauren Horton and Sue Sears. The pair, along with 12 other cousins from across Turtle Island, have traveled great distances to retrace their roots in Denendeh, Northwest Territories.
And we got off the plane and there was aunties and cousins.
Laura's grandmother was Georgina Blondin, Satugotne from Toledo, and her grandfather, Bill Boland, came from Wales and worked for the Hudson's Bay Company. Georgina fell ill from tuberculosis in 1932, but before she passed in Charles Camsell Indian Hospital in Edmonton, she asked her nurse, Sue Sears' grandmother, Ruth, to marry her husband and help raise 7 children. After that, Ruth and Bill had 3 kids together and moved to Ontario.
So we're members of Toledo, our band, and we're members of the Satoon Land Corporation, but without living on the land, touching, feeling, swimming in the Great Bear. You know.
The cousins have traveled over 3,000 kilometers across the territory to participate in traditional activities, making stops in Yellowknife, Hay River, Fort Resolution, Delaney, Fort Good Hope, Toledo, Norman Wells.
I hadn't ever seen the Dene laws before, and I was so moved. And the sharing.
They've met relatives like Ethel, Blonde, and Andrew.
And to also plan forward for the next generation, to not forget their ancestry and their homelands, and that. I think that's really important. I find coming back is really going forward.
Wherever they go, they do ceremony and pay their respects to relatives who died in residential school, and lay tobacco down at Bill and Georgina's old trading post cabin on Great Bear Lake. But after nearly 2 weeks, it's time to go home. Cousins Wayne and Dave Anderson say their sense of self has been strengthened.
No sense of identity, you know, as people or anything. I'm Dene, I know that. I'm from Toledo, I know that. Ever been there? No.
To be able to put our cup in the water, in the lake, and drink that water is so powerful, because you can't do that. We don't know anywhere in Ontario you can do that.
The trip has been cathartic.
Being able to do ceremony and shift the energy and the sense of grief, to shift that energy was incredibly moving for all of us in the family.
40 years, I tell you, it took to get enough nerve to come home, because the fear of not being remembered, the pain of not touching the land, the knowledge of why it was that the family was taken away in the first place, and it was residential school, our uncle passing, and then it was our grandmother getting tuberculosis that caused us to leave.
And for the family, it's the first of many trips to come. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
What a journey. Thanks for that story, Charlotte. We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can get in touch with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. You can read and watch our stories by heading over to the website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Well, Ashley Collingbull has made history again, and she'll join us to talk about being crowned Miss Universe Canada after the break. Welcome back. Here's a look at your current conditions. 19 in Halifax, sunny and 24 in Fredericton. Showers and 14 in Kuujjuaq, rain in Nain and a high of 7. 25 in Montreal, cloudy and 23 in Val-d'Or at this hour. 19 in Sault Ste. Marie, cloudy and 23 in North Bay. Sunny and 23 in Thunder Bay, 24 in Timmins. 20 in God's Lake, Norway House and Puckatawagan. Sunny and 23 in Winnipeg right now, 22 under the sun in Dauphin, 19 in Regina, Saskatoon and North Battleford, 20 in Meadow Lake, La Ronge and Buffalo Narrows. Cloudy across much of northern Alberta, 15 in High Level, 16 in Peace River, 15 in Edmonton, rain and 25 in Lethbridge. 17 for Vancouver and Kamloops right now. Cloudy and 15 in Prince George, rain and 12 in Smithers. 5 in Old Crow, cloudy and 9 in Whitehorse. 15 in Yellowknife, showers and 7 in Norman Wells. Plus 3 in Sachs Harbor, cloudy and 5 above in Pawatuck. 10 in Chesterfield, 14 in Arviette. 5 in Resolute, 6 in Igloolik. Ashley Collingbull, Cree actor, model, activist, and sports announcer from the Enoch Cree Nation in Alberta, has once again made history. Over the weekend, the 34-year-old was crowned Miss Universe Canada, becoming the first Indigenous person to win the title. She's also the first Indigenous person to win Mrs. Universe Canada in 2015 and appear as a Sports Illustrated model more than 2 years ago. She now has her eyes set on Miss Universe in Mexico this coming November. Ashley joins us now to tell us more about her big win. Ashley, thanks so much for joining us, and a huge congrats on being crowned Miss Universe Canada. Can you tell us what it was like to win the title over the weekend?
It was, I'm still processing all of it, honestly. It feels really good. My heart is so happy. I know this is a big win, not just for me, but for all Indigenous people to feel represented, seen, and heard. So I know the impact that this has.
Absolutely. Can you talk about some of the important issues that you wanted to highlight during the competition?
During the competition, we were given an option to do a speech, and I wanted to bring awareness to MMIW, murdered and missing Indigenous women, because, you know, I myself, as an Indigenous woman, I am targeted automatically. And I felt like in the pageant world, that's something no one gets to hear about. No one knows the true history of our country. And especially if I'm going to be representing our country, everyone needs to know the truth. And for me to be able to speak about that and bring awareness to it and also open everyone's eyes and ears to it, it's being talked about more so now. And that was the whole point, was for me to use my voice for others who are being silenced.
And like you say, not an issue many are aware about. Even in the United States, it seems like just in recent years it's been coming up more often. What was the reaction, I guess, to bringing that issue forward?
Honestly, a lot of people were really sad, crying, in shock. A lot of the people in the audience came up to me after and said, I had no idea Indigenous women were treated this way. We thought Canada was such a safe country for everyone and all women were treated equally. So yeah, it got a lot of people talking, and that's the whole point, right, is to get that conversation going, let everyone know what's really happening and get that ripple effect going so more people will speak up.
Right on. Great for bringing that up. Well, with this new platform, do you hope to continue to push for change across Turtle Island and call for positive change for Indigenous women and girls?
Always, you know, as an ambassador and seen as a role model, I know there's a lot of young women and girls and men watching me. And I want to set a really positive example and be there and be a strong force for Canada at Miss Universe, but show everyone that Indigenous people are still here. We are rising, we are thriving, and to show that there's so much success on Turtle Island for Indian country, because, you know, the media likes to stereotype us and only show the negativities that we're going through. And for me, I want to highlight our talent, the people that are rising, the people that need to be seen and heard. So yeah, I feel like it's a big responsibility, but I am so proud to take it on.
Yeah, what comes, I guess, with the responsibilities?
What comes with it? Everything. Doing the most. You know, for me, I honestly get the option to create what I want to do with this title. You know, the organization is very lenient with me wanting to, you know, chase my dreams. So for me, as I'm given more opportunities with this title, I just want to be able to create more opportunities for other people as well, open that door and make sure other people are seen. So for me, I'm trying to travel across the country, work with more at-risk youth like I've already been doing, but I think I want to just amplify the work that I'm doing on a whole nother level. So for me, I'm excited to see what this brings and what more opportunities I bring for other people as well.
Well, you've certainly accomplished a lot in a short period of time. What's coming up next for yourself?
Well, I just finished, I filmed a series called Acting Good that's going to be coming out on APTN and CTV for season 3. I am also premiering my film, The Great Salish Heist. It will be playing at the Hollywood Film Festival this November. And I'm also writing a book. I just signed a book deal with HarperCollins, so I'll be releasing an autobiography next year. And obviously, I'll be going to Miss Universe this year, so that will be exciting. Hopefully, I can make history there once again.
Well, I am certainly pumped myself for season 3 of Acting Good, and The Great Salish Heist. Definitely check it out, the only Indigenous heist movie that exists, and looking forward to the autobiography as well. What is your message to Indigenous youth that are seeing you shine big and everything that you've done?
For me, you know, I never seen anyone like me doing the things that I was doing when I was younger, so it was hard to see the dream as being attainable. But now that I'm, you know, kicking the door open, it's so important for our youth to know that there's always someone watching you. Whether you're doing whatever, you're a role model, whether you know it or not, there's always someone watching you. That's something I learned from my cookum, is that it's so important to set a good example, whether if it's your cousins, your relatives. It's so important to love and appreciate yourself for the way Creator made you, and never let fear or what anyone ever has to say stop you from chasing your dreams. You know, I had to learn to listen to what my self-worth was and realize who I am and what I'm made of. So I pushed myself and I disregarded what everyone else had to say, because I knew in here, if it felt right, then I was on the right path.
Well, I'd say you've been on the right path, Ashley, and a great role model indeed. Again, a huge congrats. Appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today, and we certainly wish you the best on your journey ahead.
Thank you so much.
And again, Miss Universe will be crowned in Mexico this coming November. Be watching that for sure. Well, that is all the time we have for your first look at today's news. You can stay up to date and find much more over on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. And I will be back here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for your next look at the APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuich, thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here in a couple hours.